my cell phone. I have 1201. So I would like to welcome everybody again. If you haven't heard me welcome you before, welcome to the first HRTM Industry Forum for the spring of 22. We started these forums back in the spring of 2020 when we were all working remotely, and we thought, you know what, this is such a great opportunity for us to reach out and touch base with our industry partners and to learn more about the industry as we navigate through the pandemic and hopefully into the endemic as we wrap up the spring semester. I'm looking for some great things to happen. And so welcome to everybody who's here as a participant. And again, just a reminder to mute your microphone, turn off your camera unless you're a panelist, and then we'll need you to leave that on. And I'd like to welcome our three panelists. And actually, I'm super excited to have our three panelists on today because it's the first time we're doing an HRTM forum. And all three of the panelists are actually alumni from our program. So those of you who are in the program and are looking to hire our graduates of our program, you can see what superstars come out of HRTM. So thank you all. Thank you, Carolee. Thank you, Laurie. And thank you, Lenny, for being here today. So, whoops. You already know me. If you don't, I'm Dr. Robin DePietro. I'm the director of the School of HRTM right now, and I'm a professor in the program as well. My area is restaurants, so I don't know about lodging much other than I like to stay in nice hotels, and I'm missing them right now. I want to also just do a quick shameless plug for our Masters of International Hospitality and Tourism Management program. Those of you who have not earned a master's degree yet, come back to school and get your master's degree in 1 year. You can also take classes online. It may take, if you do them all online, it may take a little bit more than 1 year. If you're an undergraduate student and I know you're ready to graduate, just stay and get your master's degree. So anyways, that's my shameless plug for the day. All right, so I want to introduce the people who are really going to make this happen today. Carolee Moore joined Crestline Hotels and Resorts in 2000, and she's responsible for leading a team that manages revenue and e-commerce. She's the Senior VP of Revenue Strategy and E-commerce for Crestline Hotels and Resorts. She came here and earned a bachelor's degree at the University of South Carolina, and then got her MBA at J. Mac Robinson College of Business at Georgia State. We are super excited to have her here. And I know she's traveling right after this forum. So safe travels if we forget to tell you later. And thank you so much for being here. 25 years or more of hotel experience that she brought to her position. And we're very proud of her as a graduate of our program. Whoops. The next panelist today is Laurie Savidge, the Director of Operations at Marriott's Grand Ocean Hilton Head Island. On the south side of Hilton Head Island, right before you get into Sea Pines. Laurie earned her master's degree from USC's School of Hotel, Restaurant, and Tourism Management, where she focused on sustainability in the hospitality industry and that paradigm shift towards corporate social responsibility. And now they say that she's known as a roll your sleeves up kind of leader and is very active in the Hilton Head community. And we're excited that she's rolling up her sleeves and getting involved. And actually, Laurie reached out to me and said, look, I want to be involved in an HRTM forum. And so we're very happy and fortunate that we have Laurie as well here. Oops, there we go. That's what happens when I run the Zoom. And then Lenny Swinton is here. He's zooming in from Atlanta. He's an alumnus of our School of Hotel, Restaurant, and Tourism Management, and he started his Hyatt career. He's the Assistant Director of Rooms at Hyatt Hotels and is also working very hard on the Hyatt-centric brand. And he started his career during his junior year as an operations intern. So you can take your internship and develop it into an outstanding career. Lenny's been with Hyatt Hotels for about 8 years, moving all across the US and learning and growing in his operations experience. So again, welcome to all of you. And stay tuned to your email for future dates for our HRTM forums. But now I want to get started with our forum today. So I'm going to stop sharing and hopefully you can see the good looking panelists we have right here that are all graduates of our program. So welcome everybody. Carolee, Laurie, Lenny. We are so grateful to have you here with us today. If anybody has any questions as we're going through our forum questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them. But today we're really here to talk about lodging and the lodging industry and the past, present, and future moving forward. Because 2 years ago, we held a forum actually in May, I think, of 2020. And it was pretty brutal. The forum was, you know, we were all really concerned about what was going to happen and what had been happening. And now I'm happy to say I feel like we're moving into a little bit better spot. And so I'd love to hear from you guys on the changes that your organization made during this spring of 2020 in order to really just hit the original pandemic when it started. So let's see. How about Carolee? Would you mind starting us off today?
Sure, I don't mind a bit. Thank you. And I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. It's very humbling to have a chance to return to the scene of the crime, so to speak. I was inspired and led to this industry by the University of South Carolina program, and love it. And it's been a great experience. So, you know, spring of 2020, 2 years ago, the pandemic hit, and it was, you know, I'm sitting in my office leading a team of 20 people, setting revenue expectations for hotel owners across the United States. And we are literally watching revenue just delete, cancel. It is, you go through shock very quickly. As an organization, I think what becomes critical, no matter what we talk about ever, communication becomes the key to anything you do. And our CEO immediately called together a group of the senior leaders of our company and set a daily phone call. It was brief sometimes, it was longer other days, but for the first 3 months, we spoke every day on Zoom, on camera. And it was a new experience for all of us. We were beginning to work from home, but we were giving updates on what we knew and what we didn't know. We were quickly able to pivot into the areas that really mattered. So when I start with communication, it's for a reason, because all the things that come after my next few comments have to do with the fact that we were communicating clearly and regularly, and again, keeping it brief to the things that really made an impact. We were able to call each other out for like, hey, let's move on. That's maybe not as impactful as some of these other things. So communication, no matter what. So quickly we pivoted to revise the way we operate. So my company has 130 hotels across the United States. Most of them are major brands, Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt. Love Hyatt. And we have general managers and operating teams out in the field that are driving the bus. The revenue comes from 130 business units in the field, not from the corporate leadership. I do not make money for my company. The people in the field who are working with the guests every day are the ones that make this company successful. We had to pivot quickly to support their needs differently. When you're in an operating environment that's normal, whole new definition, right? You have your structure set up to support your business units in one way. We had to very quickly do things differently. And in my world of revenue, what that meant is we had to take a lot of the decision-making and action in-house into the revenue team, where traditionally we looked to the general manager to make decisions, to give us direction on revenue, to really help set strategies. Candidly, those GMs were out there trying to figure out what to do with their guests, what to do with supplies, how much staffing they needed, where they needed to pivot on services and staffing and offerings, whether or not we needed to keep the hotel open, answering owner questions. The corporate team had to just take away a lot of the things the general managers traditionally guide us on and just run with it. And it was very eye-opening. In April, there was a very specific moment in time where the CFO, the financial officer of our company, came to me and said, I need you to forecast the month of May for this company, because the GMs just really are in shock, as we all are, and don't really know where to go. And I'm getting forecasts of 80% of budgeted revenue down to closing the hotel. And I literally went through and forecasted 130 hotels in a matter of 2 hours by just making big generalizations. And it helped us to have a very big moment of shock as a leadership team to see what we honestly thought was going to be revenue for the next few months. And we could very quickly make bigger decisions about go forward, right? Nobody wants to lay off staff, but it is the one big expense in any hotel building. The building itself is a big expense, but then the labor, and sadly, you don't need labor when your hotels aren't full, but how much do you adjust? You don't want to get rid of a team of people and then need them the next day. You don't want to keep a big team of people and then have to close for bankruptcy. So there's this very difficult, again, communication. But because we were able to look at things differently, support our hotel needs differently, pivot to sort of getting through the shock of what we were facing and start making decisions, we were able to adjust to a lot of things. So I think I'm answering it early in the pandemic 2 years ago, but we've had to carry that through. We're not meeting every day anymore. We're meeting with less frequency, but it certainly has changed the temperament of those conversations. What are we talking about? What are the priorities? How are we supporting the general managers? And I have to tell you, that has pivoted half a dozen times easily in the past 2 years, and how we've supported them and what we've done. And I can speak to some of that as we move through the other questions.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much. And that's a great perspective from you're obviously not in the daily operations. So from your perspective, it was communicating and making sure that things were effective. What about you, Laurie? You were in, operations during that time. What did you feel from an operational perspective that changed during that initial spring?
Absolutely, Robin. So we were very fortunate to have already an extensive protocol in place for hygiene and clean environments, right? That was very important, of course, to our company. So we were able to already use those prepared materials and supplies to meet those health code requirements. So we were prepared, as Carolee said. Obviously, we all had to pivot, right, in every way, shape, and form, but to already have that foundation and supplies, right, to meet those requirements really helped our organization.
Sorry. Lenny, what about you? You were you in Atlanta at that time and 2 years ago?
I was actually working for Hyatt Regency in Savannah. And, from a operational standpoint, the major impact for me, not only personally, but professionally, was my staff. That was the most important, and it was a scary time for everyone, including, my general manager, myself. We didn't know what was going to happen. But for me, in my role at that time, was my staff, because they had so many questions about, am I coming to work tomorrow, or am I going to lose my job? Those type of things. I had that was a big impact on myself personally and professionally.
That's scary. Yeah, it's a scary time. And, it's odd to look back now. Sometimes it feels like it was a lifetime ago, and then other times it feels like it was yesterday that all of a sudden the bottom fell out, and you didn't know how the virus was spread. You didn't know, a vaccine wasn't even in our kind of frame of reference. So very difficult time, and I can't imagine, being in that kind of situation where you're having to communicate with staff and not knowing yourself what was going to happen, and just trying to present that external brave front. So in terms of protocols, we'll stay with you, Lenny. What protocols did you adopt what protocols did Hyatt Regency adopt during COVID, and what protocols are still in place that you think we're not going to change this protocol that we added back in March of 2020?
Absolutely. So it starts with our values. Hyatt's values is we care for people so they can be their best. Right? So caring for our staff and caring for our guests who are staying with us during this time. No one knows what's going on. Just like Laurie mentioned, as far as their hygiene, programs, that was a lot more heightened in our perspective, from the front desk, our colleagues who are checking in guests, that was one of the most important, standards was our cleanliness, from the colleagues' perspective. Now, from the guest perspective, then we went away with, and I'm speaking operationally, entering the guest rooms, how often do we enter the guest rooms? What does that look like? It was a time where we had to kind of heighten on what this looks like from a cleanliness standpoint, so it was challenging.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine. And Laurie, what about you? What operational protocols were put into place, and which of those are still actually in place now?
Absolutely, Robin. So the protocols we adopted, they were for our associates and our owners and our guests, right? Because we're vacation ownership. So for everyone, and the protocols we adopted, they were based on municipality requirements, right? First and foremost, regarding social distancing and masks. All right. And an example I could give you was certainly removing lounge chairs around the pool decks to allow for social distancing, right? Yeah. Pre-pandemic, it was as many lounge chairs, right, as was comfortable, of course, around a pool. But then, of course, when the pandemic started, it was following those municipality, requirements that were issued to ensure that social distancing could certainly occur. So we continue to monitor those and to certainly stay compliant.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's been interesting as I talk to different people. Some people are much more comfortable in this current time than other people are. And I had a conversation with a gentleman who came and stayed on campus or on at the graduate hotel that we have here on campus. And he was kind of complaining about housekeeping not coming every day. And I'm kind of the opposite. If I'm only somewhere for 2 or 3 days, I can just, maybe I'll come down to the front desk and get a towel, but I'm kind of different than him in that philosophy. And I would think that guests would vary in terms of when they want their room cleaned, what level of hotel they want their room cleaned in daily. And, so I think the vacation ownership has the benefit of previously people came for a week and they knew what the expectations were, but has that changed, like the amount of, I think with vacation ownership, you don't get housekeeping every day, or you didn't before, did you?
Unless you elected for it, no.
Okay.
Exactly, Robin. Okay. So, right.
So that didn't change too much. Okay.
It did not too much. Yeah. But certainly traditional lodging, I imagine, of course, that
sure.
Changed, yes.
Sure. It's interesting it'll be interesting after we move into the endemic phase of the COVID, what things fully stay and what things don't. Carolee, what did you, what protocols did you all adopt other than, well, I love the conversations on a daily basis because it really did change so much. And what do you anticipate will be permanent changes in your hotels?
So again, not necessarily in the daily operation of the properties, but for us and how we support those efforts. We've really gone deep in technology to move to different hiring and employment platforms that allow employees to engage more directly into the whole process of applying for a job, going through orientation, onboarding, and then the life cycle throughout our company so that they can get their hands on the information they need quicker. And candidly, it helps us with a lot of our hiring challenges to have better technology in play. And that's been a permanent change that we've rolled out. It's taken some time to get there, but we're very excited to have some new platforms in play. It certainly has taken some of the task workload off of the operators at the hotel level. It's actually allowing them to communicate differently with the staff about where they can get information that they really need. And it allows the employee to feel a lot more empowered to sort of work within their own needs for documentation, changes to benefits, all the different things that, again, we're also faced with an industry of people who had kids who couldn't go to school and they couldn't come to work because they had kids at school. So they're trying to figure out what to do about benefits. What do I do about communicating what I can do for work shifts? There was a lot that needed to be handled. To Lenny's point, taking care of our employees, number one. Certainly taking care of the building and the owners and the investment of these assets is important, but our employees are that's what we do. So we needed to invest differently in supporting them. And we went really deep into the technology side, which was fantastic. But candidly, a lot of what we took away from the hotels as far as tasks were things that needed to permanently come off, looking back now, that they really didn't need to be worrying about. And then some of the things that we've done to take away tasks had to go back in the past year as we saw a big return of leisure demand and the hotel occupancy started spiking again. We really had to turn back to the hotels and ask them what they needed in terms of the revenue and the e-commerce. What do you need your website to say? What do you need all of the third-party booking sites to say about you? What images are primary? Is the pool open or not? We've reevaluated what travelers really need and what travelers are asking for, and we've had to change a lot to get to communicate that clearly.
Yeah, very. I think that's a very important point. I think technology's role in our industry has changed probably permanently. And, you know, not only has the pandemic impacted our hygiene and our safety in our facilities, but it's also really changed the employee picture with regard to the Great Resignation, or people leaving our industries, and then we're having to then reattract them back in. And how we do that, I think, is critical. Georgia put up a quick post: is COVID-19 impacting your travel and lodging plans? And the majority of people, I would say, they said yes and a little. So I would 82% of people, yes, at least a little, it's changed their travel plans. So what about, let's go a little bit off script. I don't want to go too much off script because I'll get in trouble here. But Lenny, what about, talk to me a little bit about your occupancy coming out of, you know, how long did you stay in Savannah as the GM?
So my role wasn't the GM. I was a front office manager at the time.
Okay.
So at the beginning of when we first initially found out about this virus, no one knew what was going on. As front office manager, I immediately noticed the decline in occupancy. In Savannah, I don't know if many of you travel to Savannah, but Savannah is one of those top destinations in the country. And our Hyatt Regency Savannah ran a 90% occupancy year to date. So if you don't know what that means, we were busy all the time. So for us, for me to walk into my office one day, log onto my computer and notice that our occupancy went from 85% to 10% in a matter of 24 hours, that was very alarming. And I just kept receiving amount of emails of cancellations. So I immediately go to my director of revenue, my general manager, and my director of operations, say, hey, what's going on? And for me, that's scary because, you know, there's so many components that you have to look into when you notice the level of occupancy, the level of business when it's, you know, fluctuating. You know, that's, you know, do I have to call my staff off? You know, do I have to cancel, you know, the bottles of champagne, you know, food and beverage, you know, there's so many components, you know, that you have to, you know, keep in mind when looking at the business level of business, excuse me. For me, I was unfortunately laid off. I was one of the first ones to be laid off. And I believe it was May of 2022. Hyatt globally laid off about 40% of their staff, and I was one of them.
Wow, that is crazy. So in time or vacation ownership, sorry, not timeshare, in vacation ownership, your model's a little bit different. So you have your rooms sold or pre-sold, depending on what your occupancy or your I don't even think they call it, maybe you call it occupancy, but you have your rooms pre-sold. And so did you find that a lot of people were canceling their weeks, or were they trying to shift weeks, or how did that look to you, Laurie?
Absolutely, Robin. So it was different, right, compared to traditional lodging, because we have an ownership product. So it allowed people to come on vacation and our occupancy stayed at solid level.
Okay.
Especially here in Hilton Head. So safe to say that'll remain the case in 2022 as well. And of course, we monitor the circumstances, right, as things change and adopt strategies as we continue to move along. But because of that ownership product, it really did stay steady.
Good. And I think also being, you know, I mean, being in the South, you know, where there's a lot of outdoor activities, that made it feel a little safer a lot sooner than some of the, you know, locations that were in cold or some of the hotels and vacation ownership that were in cold locations. I better ask a couple of questions before I get too far. All right. So one of the students says, I was reading an article during COVID. The article stated that for hotels that offer a guest app with mobile check-in and mobile keys, they're listed as higher than those that do not use the booking website. In the ACSI report, customer satisfaction declined by 2% in the quality of mobile app and 3% reliability of mobile app compared to pre-pandemic. Did you have anything regarding technology in the industry, or maybe Crystal, if I'm not asking the question right, you can unmute and make sure I am. But I think what you're saying is that customer satisfaction declined by 2% regarding quality of mobile apps and 3% reliability of the mobile app during the pandemic as compared to pre-pandemic. So do you think that has to do with the pandemic or technology? Do you use that? Do you have mobile apps? Lenny, does the Hyatt have mobile apps?
We do have one of the state-of-the-art apps, and I personally use it. I love it. I can bypass the front desk and use my mobile key to check into my room.
Okay.
I personally, we never really, looked at that, the app, or, who's using mobile keys versus, going to the front desk, checking in at the front desk. That wasn't one of those things that we really looked at. But from my experience, it seems as though all guests stop by the front desk, whether or not if they use the mobile app or not.
Okay.
As far as their satisfaction, we have, as far as our loyalty members, we have a lot of globalists. That's one of our high tier members. They love the recognition. They love, to be acknowledged at the front desk. So everyone stops by the front desk.
Okay. Yeah, I can't imagine not stopping by the front desk, but then again, I'm old and I like, that personal touch.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see, one more question. Unless either of you, Laurie or Carolee, you want to weigh in on that one as well?
I think we did see a decline in some of the customer service rankings for mobile and other things. And it really had to do with the fact that our staffing levels were very low. And it was interesting because we got a lot of empathy. So while people used to rank a 10 or a 9, they would rank a 7 and they would say, I totally get it. The desk clerk was running towels to somebody's room and I had to wait a few minutes at the desk. And then as soon as they got back to the desk, they were able to activate my mobile key. I think people recognized why. So we didn't see sort of anger. We saw empathy, but it certainly realistically, they're like, well, it took longer than normal, but I guess that's the way it is, was a lot of what we saw and heard, truthfully.
Okay. One more, let's see, a question from Douglas. With hotels decreasing services like housekeeping, recreation, or F&B, how did you address the guest concerns that their experience was not worth the rates they were paying? Did guest perception of value change as the pandemic has been evolving? Anyone? Laurie, would you like to start on that one?
I would say the perception of value remained the same. Again, we're vacation ownership. So they knew that we were, our first and foremost priority was health and safety, right? So that was just, and continues to be the most important thing. So, so they were very understanding as we had to certainly pull back. And then we've been able to allow for more on-site activities, etc. They're excited. They're happy to be able to once again participate safely, because again, it goes always back to health and safety. So
absolutely, yes,
true. Now, Laurie, did you guys do any reduction in, how you have the when you come there? I forget what the fees are called, but you have the weekly fees. Did you have any pushback on, why don't you let me have less in fees or pay less in fees? Or did you find that guests were understanding about that?
For the most part, very understanding. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good. I've heard that as well. And we work a lot with University of Aruba, and their timeshare vacation ownership industry there said the same thing, that people were bummed that they couldn't get to Aruba because the airlines wouldn't let them, but they understood that, this was kind of just one of those weird flukes. What about you, Lenny? Any concerns with being able to provide value? Do you have any complaints from guests?
We receive feedback, good or bad, no matter what. We could be doing everything right, and then we have some guests who, find something wrong. But I believe the most important thing is communication. Once we understood operationally, what level of services that we can, serve to our guests, we've ensured that we've communicated, daily to our guests. What does that look like? A pre-arrival email, a text message, you know, updating our websites, our OTA websites. That's online travel agencies, booking.com, hotels.com, you know, of the services that we have suspended during their stay. So, you know, all the information is there prior to the guest booking. You know, it's their responsibility to understand, you know, you're staying at, you know, Hyatt Regency Maui, you know, this is the level of services that we're currently offered during this time. Just like Laurie mentioned, you know, health and wellness is our top priority.
Yeah. Okay. Carolee, what about you?
You know, again, we had some hotels that were running very low occupancy, but we had some hotels that were very busy, and most of them were on the outskirts of major markets, and they were full with medical groups. Yeah. So traveling nurses, so to speak, or some of the groups that were coming through helping to set up different cleanliness environments within buildings. And so those travelers' needs were very different and unique. They wanted a place that they could trust to have a warm and safe environment for them. They weren't looking for the breakfast to be set up for them because they wouldn't have eaten it because it came off a buffet, and that wasn't something they were going to look for anyway. Right. They didn't want somebody in their room. So there were a big percentage of guests. Most of my hotels are business business locations, not necessarily leisure. Some are crossovers, but a lot of the folks that were staying in our hotels early in the pandemic were traveling because of the pandemic, and they had a very clear understanding of, I don't want you touching my stuff. I don't want you in my room. Yeah. The weird kind of funny thing, Robin, that came out of this for us was everybody was out getting to-go food. You couldn't go sit in a restaurant. So everybody was bringing their dinner back into the hotel, and the amount of trash coming out of our hotel was exponential because those to-go boxes with the sealed things, with the, you know, gloves and the I don't know, all the different things, and the bags. So when you would go down the hall at night, the guest would take their, you know, the box with the stinky sauce and put it in the hallway, and we'd literally have to go down the halls at night with these huge trash bags and just take all those horrible, like, styrofoam or whatever, all the boxes. It was just something sort of unexpected that you had to deal with. And if you didn't, the guests didn't get mad. They'd come down and put them in the lobby. So then, you know, I mean, stacks of trash bags in the lobby. And we were getting the big, huge trash cans and putting them in the lobby, and then you know, moving stuff as fast as we could. So we had to pivot a little bit there. But I do feel like a lot of our guests, again, it wasn't just a hospitality problem. This was a problem for every industry, or a challenge, or in some cases, they were super busy because of it. So people understood it wasn't just a hotel thing. So this was impactful to every human in the United States. So people walked in understanding, and I think empathetic in a big way, and they told us what they needed. And if we couldn't get them what they needed, sometimes you'd have struggles. But generally speaking, I feel like we gained a lot of patience for each other in some ways during this time.
Yeah. That's very interesting that you say that, because it's like, that's something I never would have even thought would be an implication of, you know, taking to-go boxes or bringing food in. So very different insights than what you would, you know, looking at a whiteboard and trying to figure out what's going to happen. I don't know if that would be anything that would flash on my radar screen, but very interesting. So one more question to kind of piggyback off of Douglas's. Already a struggle to prove value for price paid in the luxury segment. Any thoughts on strategies like automation, simplification of services while operating within the scope of the rating agencies, for example, Forbes or AAA? Lenny, Carolee, I know you're more in the luxury segment of lodging, at least, instead of the vacation ownership.
There's been a lot of talk about automation, but it's something that'll take some time to build out. And there have been a lot of thoughts and a lot of discussions about it. Yes, I don't have a lot to say about it yet. I just know we've had a lot of conversation. Okay.
So no big secrets you can reveal on the HRTM forum. I get it. I get it. All right. So let's see. We got a polling question. Have you noticed a change in lodging service and satisfaction? If so, is this change positive or negative? And 52% say, oops, I got to share results. 52% say yes, negative change. 40% say yes, positive change. That's great. And 8% say no change. You know, the numbers are relatively low. There's only 25 that participated, but so yes, negative changes. But I think if we would do the entire group that's on, we may see a closer between yes, positive and yes, negative And you all travel as well, so I'm sure you've noticed some positive and negative changes in the industry. I find one of the things that I notice, and maybe it's because we work and teach in the industry, is I've noticed a lot of things that have changed due to no control or no fault of yours. What I noticed was I was much more seeing much more empathy during that first 6 months or even first year. Now I feel like I don't see as much empathy. I wish I would see more. I think people are getting tired of the pandemic, as we all are.
Robin, we were referring to it as revenge travel. People were so tired of being in their houses that when they finally broke loose and went to a hotel, they were mad, they were determined, they had expectations. We were calling it revenge travel. We really
I like that.
Well, there's a loose translation from Chinese that it came from, but it's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I like that. I think revenge travel is probably right, because I mean, there are just, even, you go out to eat in a restaurant and you just see people that obviously either don't watch the news or aren't cognizant of what's happening, that it's like, why is everything so slow? It's like, just sit down, enjoy yourself. I mean, you're out.
We had people pour bleach on furniture in the guest rooms to make sure it was clean.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
That cost you a little bit as an owner.
That's great.
Literally spray marks. You could see where they sprayed bleach.
Wow. Crazy. So let's see. I have one more question on the in the chat. How can we as professors educate students, or how can students prepare for their careers to better cope with difficult situations like COVID-19? Any skill sets or knowledge that you think that they need going into the industry now that maybe you didn't even think of when you graduated? Let's see. Laurie, you want to start?
Well, that's a good question. I like it. Carolee really touched on it, communication. Just continue to make communicating your first priority day in and day out, throughout the day, at the end of the day, when you've left work, it's so important. I think that everyone is aligned and on the same page, right? Because things have changed so much during the course of this pandemic, that the more you can inform those that you lead, or certainly when you're just new into your role, the more that you can get those emails from leaders, so you know what to expect going into your next shift or your next day, I think is so important. And the business of resort operations, it is about pivoting, right? Mm-hmm. So understanding that change is going to happen every single day, and you don't necessarily know what's around the corner, but you'll be prepared, right? From your education at USC, and then of course from the guidance given by your leaders. So don't be afraid, certainly, of the business, because there's so many great nuances to it, and again, just communicate, really important.
Nice.
Absolutely. Thank you. Agree.
Lenny, anything else you would add?
I absolutely agree with Laurie. I think the first thing is communication. The first thing is communication. And then the secondly is, that empathy and care. Put yourself in, their shoes, put yourself in, your leader's shoes, put yourself in the guest shoes. Everyone is experiencing the same thing you're experiencing.
Good point.
And if I may, I would just say, for a professor, talk about active listening, please, because when we say communication, it's not just talking. And by the way, listening is great if people are saying something, but if you can't prompt the right types of conversation, communication is failing. And when you go to a hotel and you just say, "What do you need from me?" you get sort of this, let me think about that. Great, please do. So the right types of questions, the right types of listening. Communication isn't always the talking piece. That's the follow-up. Sometimes. So especially when you get into senior leadership and you don't know what's going on feet on the street, you better not think you know what the answer is. I can't. I have to go talk to a general manager, have to go talk to a housekeeper. Every time I walk through a hotel, I'm asking questions. Absolutely. How can I help you? What do you need to do your job? Is there something you need that can make things easier or better for you?
Yes. Great. I always tell my staff, I always tell my team, listen to understand instead of listening to respond. We do a lot of, I'm 30 years old, and I sometimes, when someone is talking to me, I'm quick to say something, but now I've learned patience, and I've learned to just sit there and listen and not to give an automatic response.
Nice.
Check for clarity. Please check for clarity. Is this what I'm hearing you say to me? Let me repeat back what I think you said. Please check for clarity. So
that's great.
Sorry.
I like that. No, I think that's very important. And if I understood you right, thank you for getting that joke. I don't think anybody else did on the Zoom, but yeah, no, I like that. I really think that's important because face it, a lot of our students over 2 years have been not in the classroom and not working with teams. They've been on Zoom or we've had this 2-year kind of what could be, if you didn't work it right, it could be a black hole for your learning and understanding and listening. If you worked it right, you were able to get on Zoom meetings and actively participate. My first semester teaching, which was that March and April of 2020, teaching online, I had a lot of students on there putting on their cameras, wearing their pajamas. It was obvious they weren't listening. And I say, and I still say to this day, Zoom does not mean it's an easier way to learn. I think actually it's a harder way to learn because you do have to find ways to actively engage. So I would encourage, to kind of echo what you all have said, all of our students to go and talk with, their bosses, talk with their professors, talk with people in their class to practice the skill of active listening. It's critical. Let's see, Sue.
May I be so bold too, just for students in the room, if or anyone out there in the industry, if you really are looking to grow your career, take the opportunity, if ever given the chance, to sit with anybody in your organization that you look up to and just ask them, what's the best advice you ever got? Just ask that one question. Sit and talk to people about things purposely to learn, not just expect that folks understand what to come talk to you about. So that's
Absolutely.
just be proactive.
I think that's great. No, I think that's great. I mean, your faculty members always had office hours. And I just learned this past semester that some students think that office hours are where we sit in our office and just we don't want to be bothered. And it's like, I had to explain, like, I'm here and I want to be bothered, and please, come and talk about things. And I agree. I think that's a very important message that they get, is go find someone that they look up to and just ask, best bit of advice. And mine might actually now be listen to understand and not just listen to come up with a solution. So good point. Sue Gibson, it seems that staffing shortages are the greatest challenge in this area at the moment. Is that your biggest challenge now? And if so, how are you responding to it? Lenny, you want to start?
Absolutely. Originally, I can say, yes, there was a huge challenge. Our staffing challenges. One thing about Hyatt, in my experience, we had this program called CMT, which it was pretty much a rotation. Okay, a rotation in all areas. Front desk, housekeeping, sales, revenue, so forth. So, a front desk host. So speaking from a front desk standpoint, I had a team of 12 on my staff. Weeks later, I had a staff of 3, then a staff of 2, then a staff of just myself, operating just the front desk alone. So, that was a huge challenge in itself. However, my director of sales was also fluent at the front office. So I covered the morning shift. My director of sales covered the PM shift, and my general manager covered the overnight. So, I can't speak for any other organization other than Hyatt and, everyone else's skill set. But one thing that Hyatt has groomed me and their leaders is to be talented in all areas. And that's something that we've learned and that was taught and we've actually utilized during this, tragic time. When we didn't have staff in the front desk or staff in housekeeping or staff in the restaurants, you saw our senior leaders working as servers, working as housekeepers, working as valet attendants. So it was a huge challenge, but we were able to recover right then and there.
Nice, that's great. How about you, Laurie?
Lenny, great point about cross-training. I think in resort operations, it's so important that you not only know your job, but the job of your colleague, right? And then to have that mutual respect, especially whether it's between housekeeping, engineering, and front office. I think it's just integral, right, to a successful resort operation. But, we're in the same boat as everyone else, certainly with having certainly current labor issues and having people apply to our job within the business. But we've been fortunate. We have a lot of loyal associates here within Marriott Vacation Club, and we're just so thankful to them, right, throughout the entire pandemic, continuing to do what they do day in and day out. And so and that takes us from good to great, right, is because of our associates. Absolutely.
What about you, Carolee? You're in a unique situation that you get to look over many different brands and probably many different segments. But is staffing still the predominant challenge at the unit level or at the hotels themselves? And what about at your level?
So yes, at the hotel level, it's still a challenge. In fact, I was able to sit with a number of industry colleagues last week in a different type of a meeting in person for the first time across multiple types of hotels. And we were talking about how we thought it was going to be a short-term problem, and it really isn't. It's going to be a sustained issue for us. Part of it is that we just lost a very loyal workforce to different industries. When we had to lay people off, which is the most gut-wrenching, awful thing ever, they needed to find work, and they did. They found Amazon. They found all sorts of different opportunities in different industries, driving and doing different things. So we just lost them from our industry, and to try to replace them is not easy. And by the way, try to replace them as people we love and we're family with is not easy. Seriously, this was very painful. But when you're just out trying to fill positions, you're churning through the normal cycle of you kind of have to hire 2 for every 1 you want to keep over a period of time, just from people not liking the job or turnover or their work performance or whatever it is. So you've really had to amp up, not just to fill the positions, but to really overfill your openings to get back to a stabilized staffing level, and we're not there. Part of it is pay, but a lot of it is just people willing to work. And I'm not saying that in ugly ways. Sometimes it is, I'm at home taking care of folks that are sick. I'm at home taking care of adult elders in my family, children, whatever it is. People are still making different life choices. So we've had to respond by being more flexible. We always look for full-time 9 to 5 housekeepers. Why can't I take somebody 2 or 3 days a week part-time? Why can't I let them come in at 6 in the morning so they can start a second job at 2 in the afternoon?
Right.
We've really had to flex. We pay differently now. A lot of the other industries are paying weekly or daily. You get a pay card, you don't get a paycheck, and we just refill it. So why can't we pay more frequently? So there are a number of things we've had to pivot on in the past 2 years that will be permanent changes, but we're now out competing and looking for talent in different places than we have ever before. And it's done something to our industry I think in a good way in the long term, that we've had to really look at what we offer people in value to their family, to their life experience, and to their feeling of fulfillment, candidly, and what they feel good about doing every day. And it's significantly changed our approach. It's changed the way we've recruited and how we've gone about training and making sure people aren't thrown to the wolves. You cannot hire a housekeeper and say, here's a cart, here's a towel, here's a rag, extra gloves, wear your mask, have a nice day. You've got to spend time. You've got to give people confidence in the tools they need. You've got to communicate. But it goes through every job in the hotel. You can't hire folks in maybe the way somebody used to do. Surely not any of us ever did that. But somebody out there in our industry was doing that. And we have to take time and be more caring and careful about taking care of our employees in a different way and being more flexible to their needs, quite frankly.
I think that's great. I agree with you that somebody didn't always do a good job sometimes in the industry for hiring. But I think that in a way, this new environment that we find ourselves in, I think could be really beneficial for these students coming up, this generation. I don't know which one we're on, maybe Gen Z, because they're innovative and they're thoughtful and they're creative and being a baby boomer, I didn't quite get it. Sometimes I still don't. But the cool thing is these guys are going to come in and help organizations be flexible and think of new ways to do things. And it's super exciting. I mean, it was scary. And 2 years ago, I was scared, just like everybody else. And then when you saw what happened, that companies we don't need a $15 minimum wage because the industry, the supply and demand is going to dictate what we pay. And the culture of the the organization. So I'm excited, optimistic, and it sounds like you all are as well. Let's see. We got another poll. In your opinion, how long will it take for a full recovery of the lodging industry? We had 10% said 1 year, 67% said 3 years, 24% said 5+ years, and nobody said it's recovered. So there you go. That's what our folks online think. So let's kind of close today with the last question, which is kind of related to this one. And I know I've moved things around on you on the list, but looking in your crystal ball, so I'm hoping that you all have either a crystal ball or an old Ouija board. But what changes do you think will be forthcoming as we move further into 22? And how long do you believe it's going to take for a full recovery of the lodging industry to get us back to 2019 numbers? Let's see. How about stop sharing? Here we go. Get out of here. All right. Who wants to start? I'll take a free call on this one.
I'll do it.
All right, Carolee, why don't you start? So what do you see as changes for 22? And then when do you think we're going to be recovered?
So changes to 22 is probably the most difficult of the questions, because I did not foresee what came to us in 2021 with the revenge travel, the ensuing need for a different approach to labor and filling positions. And we were shutting down inventory because we couldn't clean rooms. We had a lot going on. This year, we surely hope that we can staff up differently and be prepared to handle whatever type of leisure. I'll tell you something. I'll start by saying, I think we have learned as an industry that in the United States specifically, and maybe a little more globally than we knew, travel is not a luxury. Travel is not a required thing for a job. Travel is an expectation of the younger generations coming up now. They absolutely felt like this was something they had to get back to, needed to get back to, expected to get back to. I think in my mind, it was always, vacation's a luxury, you travel for, fun and when you can. And I thought everybody just hole up at home and be okay. No, this is a thing. And I love that. It made me feel a lot more confident in my career going forward, because it's not just about travel for vacation. It's about going to see family. It's about going to connect with employees. It's about going to connect with vendors and whatever within your career. But these meetings that we used to sort of dread going to in the industry, I so look forward to them now, because I want to see people in person. I get so excited even with a mask and I can't recognize people. So the absolute passion that people had to get back to hitting the road changed our own perception of our industry and what we could do and what we could expect. People's empathy and care through this. And candidly, we're closing swimming pools and nobody cares. We always thought that was a big deal. They want the gym. Everybody wants the gym. And the breakfast doesn't need to be this huge buffet of things that everybody's touching and breathing on and sneezing on. We've really had the opportunity. We were sort of forced to rethink everything. And it's a wonderful opportunity to be joining the league of the industry right now, because it is a time to pivot and do things differently. Our customers absolutely demand to come and stay with us, which is great. I do think the value of our business has changed, even in our own minds. We're recovering faster in average rate than we have during any downturn in the past. We can't even call this a black swan anymore. This has got to be called something different, because we came back fast and furious with rates because people had a value assigned to it. So now we can put our own spin, I hate to call it a spin, but maybe twist or turn on how we recover to serve the needs of I won't even say new travel, or the new attitude of travel. And I think we can now do that differently. And I think Lenny has some great examples of things that I know he's done. And I've heard Laurie say great things. So I know it's coming with this folks coming up through the industry right now, because we've got it. And the creative folks coming up in Gen Z are going to be the leaders of this, and the people making it happen on the street. So I have more confidence than ever. We're going to recover in the next 2 to 3 years, and more people want to travel and they will get back out there.
Nice. How about you, Laurie?
Oh, that was great, Carolee. I think when it comes to resort operations, we're just going to continue to adjust our pandemic protocols, right, based upon those municipality requirements for our owners and guests to vacation safely. I think just continues to be the changes, and staying on the pulse, certainly, of what those changes are at our resorts and, within the different areas across Vacation Club, because we are an international company, of course. So So that's where I would say it was certainly just looking at those protocols. And again, it goes back to that communication, right? Of when those protocols change, letting those site leaders know how they need to adjust to whatever changes are happening.
Nice. Very good. Thank you. How about you, Lenny?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you both said some great things. I think, hand in hand in the operation, I'm fortunate, at the Hyatt Regency Buckhead, Atlanta, to be fully staffed at the front desk, in our restaurants, in, housekeeping. My approach, we opened this hotel on December 14th, and I relocated from San Diego to Atlanta to open this beautiful hotel. And my approach was a little different. Just for an example, it was tough, trying to find the right fit, for the front desk, in this location. I had my recruitment process looked a little different. Instead of, posting, a job on Indeed or on our website, I pretty much just went to the mall. I went to the mall, I observed, I talked to, different people just to see, what their mindset is like, what are they looking for a new opportunity? Could this be the right fit for you? So it's looking through the lens differently from, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, and so forth. And it is all about, empathy, care, and then just being genuine.
Nice. Nice. That is, you guys have been like the top panel ever. It's so great to have your perspectives and to look at this from a lens of, we looked at what we did. These are the changes that we made. This is, these are the changes that we're continuing to make, but you're looking forward and saying, yeah, I mean, it's going to be there and it's going to be a different business, but we've got these students ready to step in, and we've got, some changes in policies that you all have made and talked about. And so I really want to thank you again. I mean, it's phenomenal to have 3 alumni from the program. It makes me feel great about what we get to do every day. And I really hope that if any students have any questions, you'll reach out and we can put you in touch with these expert panelists and expert alumni. So thank you.
Send a request on LinkedIn and just put USC on there for me.
There you go. That would be great. I appreciate you.
Yeah, why not?
All right. All right. You guys are great. Lenny, I'll contact you about Atlanta. Laurie, I'll probably see you because I make my way down to Hilton Head quite a bit. And Carolee, we need to connect sometime soon because I really appreciate all your insights. And I know the rest of the group on Zoom does as well. So thank you all. Thank you to the audience today, and keep an eye out. We'll be having another forum in, I think, late March or early April. So take care.
Go Gamecocks.
Yay.